Hi everyone, Sarah Pacaro here. Today's video is going to be about how to deal with unavoidable triggers because there's so much information out there. Most of the information is in the form of advice, and advice often just makes you feel worse and makes you feel even more bad about yourself than you already do because it seems as if taken, it works for some, yet you take it, you try it, and it doesn't work for you. So we're going to get into how to deal with unavoidable triggers in this video. A lot of people will tell you, well, you just need more self-care. You just need more self-love. And if you give yourself that, then you won't experience these triggers the way that you do. So they'll tell you things to do to avoid triggers. So like knowing your boundaries and enforcing them. And the problem is you don't believe that you're deserving of having boundaries in the first place. So therefore you don't. And that's not something that you want to think or feel about yourself, but it is something that you know is deep within yourself, because if you didn't have those feelings and thoughts, you would be able to easily enforce and implement boundaries. So boundaries definitely help with avoiding triggers, but if you don't believe that you are capable of setting a boundary, or you're worthy of having one, or you're so programmed and patterned and used to people stepping over them, walking over them, and you just sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, you're going to continue to get triggered. So reading a book on boundaries is going to do very, very little without the unconscious beliefs that you have matching the belief that you are deserving of setting a boundary. So another common advice is take care of yourself physically, eat well, get enough sleep, exercise. Again, yes, if you do those things, you'll be in a much better state and be less reactive to the triggers that you have, right? But sometimes you had an incredible night's sleep, you're doing really well, you're going for walks, you're doing yoga, you're going to the gym, whatever it is, and suddenly out of nowhere, this trigger happens. I recall this years ago when walking into church and being completely triggered by a smell. The smell came out of nowhere. The smell was the ex-narcissist cologne. And I don't know who it was and where they were and when they walked by me, but smells can be triggering. And I remember smelling this and just bawling and almost convulsing, shaking. I was with my mom and she was asking me, "Oh my God, what happened? Are you okay?" And I said, I couldn't even speak. But that was a trigger. And there's still unconscious connection to that and emotional processing that needs to occur in order to alleviate the things that trigger you. So advice like, well, just don't go there anymore isn't going to help, because sometimes those triggers are uh, are are deep within. They come out of nowhere and you don't know what they are until they occur. So advice like, well, just don't go there anymore doesn't help in the moment or even afterwards. More advice that you see when it comes to triggers and how to avoid them is just let it be. You don't know how to let it be. You do know what you're experiencing is incredibly high levels of anxiety and panic, and you don't want to just let anxiety and panic be. You want to get out of that state, and it's the trigger that's causing you to be in it. So just let it be and just let it go is something that you probably feel is very triggering, because you would like to be able to, like it seems like other people are able to, and you want to be that too, but you can't because of this trigger, and that leads to anxiety and panic. And it seems like it comes out of nowhere. So there are the things that can trigger you, like maybe seeing your ex's name or seeing your ex's vehicle or your parents or your past abusers car, or seeing their name pop up on your phone and knowing that you're going to go into a situation with them, maybe where you have to have a conversation. You can anticipate the trigger, but what about those things that you can't? What about those things that seem to come out of nowhere? How do you just let those be and let those go when you're in the heightened state of the symptoms from being triggered, like the inability to breathe, the sweating palms, the inability to even speak? And some advice out there about how to not be triggered is practice mindfulness. Well, what if this happens at your job or at your work? and you can't come down from this trigger, and you've got a big meeting. Maybe the trigger is so deeply embedded in your unconscious that it has something to do with you speaking in front of other people, right? The deeply rooted fear of public speaking or presenting, and your job is on the line and you're dependent on this, and suddenly this unavoidable trigger comes out of nowhere, and you were fully prepared. You put everything into this presentation, and you're very prepared. You've gotten feedback, you know it's good, and it comes time to step into that and step up and present this. And then there's this unavoidable trigger. You don't know where it comes from. They generally come from deeply rooted unconscious fears that you have and beliefs that you have about yourself. So sometimes they're unavoidable because you may think, oh, it's fine. I've done this before. It's actually not that big of a deal. And all of a sudden, this wave comes over you. Well, that's an unavoidable trigger, right? I mean, I wouldn't think to even be able to avoid going to church because I thought I was going to smell someone's cologne. An unavoidable trigger. What do you do in that moment? And again, lots of advice, lots of tips and tricks out there that will tell you things like find ways to cope. Here's the thing with coping, however. If you need something to cope, it means you've still got that thing that's causing you to need the coping and finding ways to do that. And people can use coping mechanisms as defense mechanisms, as avoidant mechanisms. I'm going to defend myself from this, so that's creating space for myself from this. But I'm also avoiding it because every time I feel this, I'm just going to go do that. And that continues to keep you stuck in that cycle of whatever it is internally and unconsciously that is causing that trigger. So truly getting deep within your own mind to connect with that so that you don't need to cope from it because you break in that loop and that cycle. But if you're in the middle of it, of course, finding ways to cope, removing yourself, creating and establishing a physical boundary, and recognizing your body's responses to a trigger. My responses to a trigger are I can't breathe. My chest starts to feel really heavy. My heart starts pounding. It feels like it's going a million miles an hour. So whatever it is, if I recognize my body doing that response to a trigger, then I will leave and breathe, right? I call it leave and breathe because a lot of times what you do is you notice that you begin to hold your breath. You're holding your breath. That's almost in this frozen response and just hoping whatever it is that's triggering you will go away, but you need breath to live. So making sure that you're breathing, using deep breathing exercises after removing yourself from it, getting into a safe space and state where you are away from that trigger. I remember saying, I'll be right back, and going to the bathroom and just breathing through it in that moment. I knew that that was a sign that there was more to do after that when I was highly triggered like that. And what's going to happen after that is you're going to notice your thoughts. Your thoughts become very negative. Your thoughts become redirected and start to chase this rabbit hole down. What's wrong with me? What is happening to me? And those old unconscious beliefs are going to come up and resurface. All the ones that you've tried to push aside, set aside, and push away so that you didn't feel that way you feel when you're triggered, right? That you're not good enough, that you're incapable, that you're unworthy, all of those negative and limiting things, which highlight and show up and present in your thoughts and have you chase down that rabbit hole and more than likely do things that you don't want to do and then beat yourself up and just become filled with shame and regret afterwards. More advice out there is trying visualization exercises. Try and visualize a positive life, what your life would look like without this. It's really difficult to do if you truly don't believe that you could have a good life or that you could have a life without these triggers. You just feel like, I don't know what it is, especially undesired and unwanted triggers, I think, which all of them are. You are going to think, well, am I supposed to just do this every time? Like, I don't know what it is that triggers me. I worked with a client one time who was triggered by going to the grocery store. And she knew there was no logical reason why she should be triggered by going to the grocery store. She needed to. Obviously, the grocery store has lots of things that we need in order to survive. But there was undesired trigger and feeling of overwhelm and sheer panic and anxiety every time she even thought about needing to go to the store to get stuff for herself or for her kids. So an undesirable trigger is something that maybe just doesn't make sense, or maybe it just happens and you don't have any other way to avoid that or remove that from your life. So you can try going. In her case, she came to me after trying going to other stores, and it seemed to be happening in all stores. And some people will tell you just take it one step at a time and take it slow, take it easy, face your fear. Well, when you face your fear, that may be what causes the trigger. right? And you may be put in a situation where you don't know that you need to face your fear. Like, I didn't know I had a fear of cologne. What a strange fear. And I truly don't have a fear of cologne. It was that particular undesired, unwanted, and out of nowhere trigger that told me there was still some unconscious connection there. Now I can spell it and just go, yeah, nice cologne. And the triggers are gone. So, taking care of yourself, other common advice, doing activities that calm you, but we're talking about undesired triggers here. So, if you're doing activities that calm you, for example, one thing that calms me is yoga, is going to worship. And what if somebody shows up with that same cologne and I'm doing something that calms me, but I still find that I'm triggered? So that's not always the answer either. What about challenging those negative thoughts or those anxious thoughts or those self-defeating thoughts? Well, then you get into that arena with challenging and arguing, and one person's going to win and the other person is going to lose. And you're probably going to feel like that thought, that trigger, and all the signs and symptoms that it causes you to feel, believe, and experience is wins, and you're always on the losing end. And then what about just accepting that life has unavoidable triggers and just finding peace with that? Well, where's that peace that you're supposed to find within it, right? Because you can put yourself in a bubble and stay at home and just tell yourself, I'm just going to sit here and try and avoid all anxiety. I'm not going to go to work because what if they ask me to do something? And what if I get triggered by my boss even calling my name and calling my name into the office to praise me? And they're telling me, wow, you're doing such an incredible job. But I didn't know that. I got triggered unavoidably because they said, hey, can you stop by when you have a minute? And you're thinking, and you get that same feeling, the inability to breathe, your heart racing, and oh my God, I'm going to get fired. What are they going to say that I did wrong this time? And while you're going down there to connect and speak with your boss, your mind is again going down that road of negativity, thinking you're going to get fired, thinking that you're going to have to start looking for another job soon. How much money do I have in my savings? Oh my God, I shouldn't have bought that thing. It was too expensive. I should have known this. How could I be so stupid? And you step in and your boss is just there to praise you and tell you how incredible you've been doing and how all of the work that you've done has made a huge contribution to the direction that their company or their department is going. Well, an unavoidable trigger, right, should not be the receiving of compliments. And sometimes it is, but then you sit there and you're just can't breathe, heart's racing, palms are sweating, and you're thinking, and you're just frozen like a deer in the headlights because that unavoidable trigger may just be someone telling you you're doing a great job and just saying, hey, can I talk to you? So if, hey, can I talk to you is an unavoidable trigger, a lot of people need to talk to you a lot of times about different things. So if that's the case, and something that's small actually is that big, and something that's small and simple is that big and complex, there's more going on. There's more going on within, and there's more going on deeper within you unconsciously that's causing that trigger, right? Because you can't control when people are going to say, hey, I need to talk to you. Can you when do you have a minute? Can you step into my office for a second or whatever it is, even if it's a text message from a best friend? And maybe there's really excited to share with you some wonderful news, but you're thinking, oh my gosh, right? And your mind immediately goes down the road and path of negativity and about what you did wrong and about what this is going to mean. And it's never a positive outcome. And your mind just follows that rabbit down that deep dark hole and that triggers you, right? So when you are experiencing unavoidable triggers, that is a sign, that is an indication that there's more going on within you that has to do with the perception, the beliefs that you have about yourself in connection, in relation to those other things out there that are triggering you within here. So if you're sick and tired of not being able to process through unavoidable triggers, then let's connect. Let's see if we're a good fit to work together. You can also find out more information about my free masterclass, which tells you about the Transforming Past Pain to Present Power program, which helps you heal from deep within those triggers, both the avoidable and the unavoidable ones. And most importantly, your connection in relation to those. All right, guys, that is it for today's video about unavoidable triggers. Until next time, be well.